Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and together we have a very special guest, Susie Arenos. Now, you're a yoga instructor, a massage therapist.
I am.
And
a special ed teacher.
So you have a trifecta. You're doing very well. But, you know, we can talk about a lot of things because those are major ideas. But in any case, let's talk about a little bit about yoga. Start from the beginning.
Sounds good.
How did you get into it, or, you know?
I began, let's see,
beginning.
When I was a teenager, a group of friends and I went to a transcendental meditation program. And we actually all were raised Jewish. We tried the meditation, and I went a little further to do some yoga. And this was back in the 70s when yoga was not as popular. So I started to explore meditation and yoga, and ultimately I took a training in my early 30s to teach yoga. I used to use yoga in my special ed preschool classes that really helped children get more centered and grounded in their bodies. They could relax a little bit. Teachers liked it so much they encouraged me to go on. So then I trained at the Kripalu Yoga Center and became a yoga teacher. So I've been teaching yoga now to all levels, grown-ups, children, for 20 years. And most recently taught an adaptive yoga this past weekend for a spina bifida conference. Which is spina bifida is when the spine does not fully form at the base, and it's a whole array of different degree of disability. Some kids can still walk around with crutches. They might not have as much use of their legs. Others are wheelchair bound. So what I did was, I would say there was about 30 people, half were in wheelchair, half were caregivers, and really just gave them an opportunity to close their eyes and relax. Some of them had never, ever relaxed. They loved it. People in the wheelchair became more aware of their torso, their arms, which they use as both their arms and legs to move themselves around. So it was just a little piece of yoga, just mindful breathing, self-awareness, calming down, shutting down. It's basically like prayer. I call yoga the mini Shabbat for the body and the soul.
Well, I'm going to ask you about how to connect yoga with Judaism, but I also heard an interesting thing. Yoga is obviously I don't know if it's the Indian name or the Chinese name, but that's the name, yoga, and really in Hebrew, yega means to meditate.
How close is that?
Yeah, so that's always an interesting idea across cultures, so I think that's an important idea there is very interesting. But just from a novice, because I don't know anything about it, I'm sure a lot of our viewers are also, some people know about yoga. But, there's two things then. The meditation, you always hear what you were talking about, and like people, they're contorted or, something, I'd break my back doing some of the things that I see pictures of. So is it mind or mind and body or only body?
It's both together. So a lot of times, because yoga is so popular now, and the more advanced forms of hot yoga and very intensive movement yoga is what's popular, yoga in Sanskrit means sun moon, or kind of a balance together. So sun moon, and to yoke, to harness the energy of the body. So it's a lot like I like to think Kabbalah Adam, of a container holding the infinite. So with yoga, it's the same kind of thing, where you feel your own neshama, your own inner light, in the body that you're in, and it becomes a meditative form of movement, so that as you move, you bring yourself present. It's almost like prayer. For me, it's prayer. I do my yoga practice every day. That's how I start my day. And you become very present. You think, you watch your thoughts, you listen to your breath. Prayer is a lot of listening, so you're connecting your own soul into the infinite, and yet you're moving. It's healthy for your body. So every stretch opens up the body. It opens the spine, keeps it flexible. It pretty much massages your organs as you get into different postures. You find your own comfort level, so it brings you into greater self-awareness, greater self-acceptance, especially people like I had just taught in wheelchairs, where they may not feel as good about their bodies. They felt a lot better afterwards because they could breathe. I always tell people, who are discouraged about yoga from the more contorted poses, if you can take a deep breath, you can do yoga. If you can close your eyes and be still for a few minutes, that's very yogic. So again, I always call it like the mini Shabbat for the body. Every day you take that time to just listen, to just stop all the rushing, all the chatter of the mind, and you listen and you slow down and you tune in. And then that helps you to recharge so you can go back out into the regular world. It's very interesting,
but let me just say that some opinions that they say it's more Eastern religion. I mean, I know that you're Jewish-minded. I mean, I knew your parents. Obviously, they were very, very unobvious, but it's obvious to me that they were very, very Jewish-minded in the Jewish community. You're a native Albanian, but you know, on the other hand, I mean, you're leaning, I see, of course, to the Judaic idea, but is it that neutral, or is there connotations of Eastern religions in there, and then people get a little bit scared? Hey, I'm Jewish, I'm not a Eastern religion.
And my own personal experience, when I trained 20 years ago and was at the Kripalu Center, I wasn't accustomed to the chanting, which was in Sanskrit. So I decided, all right, I'll embrace this. And what was happening was Hebrew was coming out as I was embracing it. And in a lot of different programs that I've taken, I find Hebrew coming out, which is a very interesting experience. And yet they call it the Buju, which is the synchronicity of Buddhism and Judaism, and the belief in our own inner souls, our own neshama. There's a woman, Sylvia Boorstein, who has a book out that's called Funny, You Don't Look Buddhist, and she does meditation, so that it's not even a religious thing, it's more of a spiritual practice. So that's how I've looked at yoga, as more of a spiritual practice, even though when I first started teaching parents, when I was teaching children, parents might be concerned that it had a religious overtone. But you think of the Dalai Lama, who says his religion is simple, his religion is kindness. So the bottom line. That's how I look at it.
There's an interesting story with the Dalai Lama, that he went to the rabbis, and because they were in Tibet, because their center in Tibet, which was a part of China, China wants them. Again, exactly the political influence. I don't know, but you know, usually people can keep their identity while they're in the land. If you're in Turkey, you'll be a Turkish. I mean, you know, it's all around you. But here, the Jewish people for 2,000 years were in Russia, they were in Europe, now they're in America, all over the world, literally. And Jewish people keep their identity for the most part. So he was wondering, how to keep your identity even though you're not in your homeland. And
yes,
it's interesting.
So true. And especially like as yoga or Eastern philosophy kind of comes more into the mainstream of America, it's being used more for health reasons, and the amount of stress that people carry, when you think of the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system of the body, whatever religion you are, we live in these bodies. If we carry a high level of stress long enough, the body begins to break down. It's only meant for little bursts to fight the tiger. It's not meant to be a steady state of being, more coming into a homeostasis, into a balance in the body. So if more people are doing yoga for that reason, for the health reason, to get more in touch with themselves so they can calm down from all the stress and things that they deal with, it really improves everybody's mood. So
you're talking about mental health, but
mental health, physical health. So it's both. Yes, also. That's the nice part about yoga, is it covers a lot of places. It covers the physical health of the poses and the stretches and the spine and the flexibility. It covers your inside, your soul, the mind, body, spirit. It gets you in touch with your thoughts, and yet at the same time it gets you outside your thoughts, so that you're actually, we call it witness consciousness, where you're actually watching as your mind is thinking, because the mind is usually always thinking, but you kind of take a step out and you just watch it. You take that break from the constant rolling of the tapes of your mind. And when you are in a yoga program, if you're going through the practice, you also watch yourself as you move, because your inner judgment comes in. It's like, I'll tell people in class, it's not how far you're going in your poses, it's how you're going far. So you learn your own patterns, your own inner voice, your own self-judgment, so that sometimes people are thinking, oh, I can do this pose, I'm so flexible. Other people are thinking, I can't do anything, I'm a failure. So that people get to find their own patterns. I like people in my classes to feel like they're worthy, self-acceptance, And even if they're just taking a breath, that's enough, because they've become in touch with themselves. So self-acceptance is key.
It's a very interesting thing I'm thinking about, because you're right, it means through the physical, if you can let down the barriers, that's kind of what you're saying.
Exactly.
You can tune into your inner self.
Yes.
If people feel that when they, it's interesting. I don't know, you talk about, you've done Sanskrit and Hebrew. I know my father, I don't know if this is really related, but, he had a stroke, and sometimes they say language is the problem, and he just was speaking Hebrew. And my mother says, what are you praying? You're at the kitchen table over here. What are you praying now for, saying Hebrew? And then she went to the doctor and said, well, something's wrong. And the doctor yelled at her, you should have taken him to the hospital. He's having a stroke. Says, I don't know, he's speaking Hebrew. I don't know the language. But it's interesting how we thought of that as your inner self come through. Sometimes when the barriers, the external barriers
peeling
of your
body
that you express. Do you feel that? Of course, I'm a rabbi, so I need to ask that. I always feel that your inner, like you were saying, neshama, which really means your soul, your inside, really, again, there's so many outward trappings, and, you're living in a world, and who knows how different people are educated with different ideas, and a lot of times they're antithetical to Judaism. But, strip away all your ideas and your mindsets, and let your Jewish neshama shine through. I guess, your yoga, you're not a rabbi, so you can't, hey, you're a Jewish woman, why don't you forget about the world and just let your Jewish soul, shine through. But do you see that, any ideas with Jewish people? Or?
I've done classes for Jewish groups. I did the Mifgash, the teenage yoga, which was very interesting, and played Jewish meditation music throughout. So it was Hebrew chanting in the background, and also just had them, again, just being human and just letting go of the barriers and the judgments and looking at everybody else and just turning inward for a moment and feeling the commonality and feeling the pureness of the soul, so that sometimes stripping away everything else, you can come into that meditation, you can come inside, you can get a sense of yourself, you can get a sense of your connection with spirit. So I find every yoga class like prayer in that way, because it strips away the boundaries. And there's a lot of different philosophy, Eastern philosophy, of the layers in the body, from the physical all the way in to the different chakras and the systems of energy in the body. Many, many ancient doctrines on that. And I do find ancient Judaism, Kabbalah, the ancient Buddhism, there's an overlap. There's a lot of overlap with that. So, kindness.
Actually, it's interesting, because it does say that Avraham, the first Jew, most people know the most basic Judaism, and yes, he had a son, or he had two sons, Isaac and Ishmael. He didn't appreciate, so he sent them away, or because Sarah, his wife, knew more than he did. That's another story itself. The women sometimes know the character of their kids more than the men. But in any case, there is another part of the story that people don't, that after Sarah passed away, he took Keturah, he took another wife, and he had 6 more children with her. And it's right in the Bible. It's not even commentary. Sometimes you say Kabbalah or the Jewish mysticism. This is right in the Bible. And it says he sent them away with gifts. But now it's like, what kind of gifts? Did you give him a new Cadillac for his kid?
A new camel, maybe?
Yeah. But it doesn't say that. Because it's such an open question, the Talmud jumps on and says, well, what did he give? And it says, Shem Tumah, the impure name of God. So again, the Gemara, even though it elaborates on things, you still have to break it down. What do you mean by that? And a lot of times, and I've seen it in other books, not in Judaic books, like in biblical books, and I don't know where the sources are, but you see where everybody went to the Far East and India. I don't know where the source. I still would love to see the source where they get that from. But all right, accepting it that they know what they're talking about. This is like, so you can really see a link in Judaism. You say, well, they were like, say in Tibet, they were on a mountain and they were isolated and they didn't talk to anybody. Well, that's really not. Israel, first of all, geographically is the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa. So they're right in the middle of literally of everybody and everything. and they had influence, and there's what to talk, it's a whole subject its own right, not for now, that they were influenced from Rome and Greece, their occupying forces. And on the other hand, Judaism did obviously have an effect. I mean, just even Christianity. I mean, here, here Rome or Europe, which is Christian, and Islam, which is the whole Arabian, they were influenced from Jews. That's just, again, just the most basic history you can have. But just back to the yoga, that it seems that many of these ideas, now who knows? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't say that, but Abraham was a very big meditator. It says that, and you don't see that in the Bible, in the commentaries. He was a thinker. He wasn't just, I'm a Jew, so I eat chicken soup. I'm a real good Jew. But, he did, like you say, was very spiritual, to say the least. And obviously, you can almost say obviously, he gave that over to his children. That extended to the...
Branched out.
Yeah, I know. So there's, like you say, there's what to think about how Judaism, like even these other, surely Christianism to talk about that, just basic definition that they were influenced from Judaism. But even sometimes the Far East, where you don't say, well, what is China and these places influenced from Israel? But maybe there is a connection between the two. So there is like commonality between these different religions.
I think there's a lot of overlap. What's interesting in Hindu or Buddhism is they have all their deities, which I often think the idols that Abraham crashed might have been all these different multi-armed, interesting deities when you read about them, and yet they still believed in the connection, the inner God, the inner spirit that connected everybody. So you almost wonder if the deities, just like Greek mythology, were just pieces of personalities, just like biblical characters, different pieces of personalities. Some would say they were aliens, some would say they were angels. There's so many different interpretations, but one thing that seems clear and a commonality is that inner soul that everybody has that somehow connects everyone together. To me, that's God. That's it. So.
Well, the oneness. I mean, God is the oneness.
And angels. I always wondered about angels in Hebrew school, because every story had an angel. There was always the stranger that would come to your door and to be kind, because they could be an angel. So I always wondered about the angels and doing the work, and would ask about that as a child. So.
I mean, really, Judaism says there are angels, and there are obviously forces in the world. But are they a separate entity? That's really the kicker point between other religions and Judaism. Judaism says, yes, there's entities, but ultimately God's in control of the world.
He's steering the ship.
Yeah, that's it. But that's where the oneness comes in. They're all integrated together.
Yeah,
it's very interesting. You have any stories that people, that they get healed through, I guess...
Oh, with yoga?
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Countless stories, especially as it's become more popular. Just simple ones. People who might have come in with backaches and bad backs or bad hips, they come out feeling better in their bodies. A class I teach Friday morning just at the Bethlehem Y is a gentle class, and it's my most popular class. And a lot of people are older, and they come in and we start slow so that they really feel what's happening in their spine. They move. I have them accommodate. They might use yoga blocks. There's a lot of extra support with gentle yoga that you can use, ties, chairs. There's a whole section on chair yoga that's all done from a chair so that people have that safety, that security if they're not going to be on their feet. And it's just a lovely way to breathe and move, and especially people with arthritis and aging bodies, they'll even say, I don't know what I would do without yoga, because it really helps. That's the physical part. And then the mental part.
Arthritis, usually they say it doesn't help.
Oh, yes. Very gentle, systematic movement. Sometimes I'll blend in Feldenkrais movement, which was an Israeli guy who also came up with, it's very yogic, it's very mindful, repetitive movement that can help open up the hips and sciatica pain that people get. Different ways that we as Americans are always sitting or driving or stressing at work or computers. It helps to get out of that. I have people turn their phones off. We have a complete hour. We turn the lights down. And everybody, they don't have to look at anybody else. Some people will, especially the teenagers, but we take it back so that they're more internal. And yet, they feel that connection to everybody. So some people do fear it's religious, especially when we do the namaste. But again, I think of it as just bringing the palms together, healing palms together, and honoring the heart. So a lot of yoga is about opening the heart So I end my classes usually reading some kind of poem or statement, and then have everybody, they Om together. With Jewish groups, we do a shalom, and we end up meditating on the Om part of the shalom. I always should say, because we have to shah them before we Om. And then I talk about honoring the peace within our own hearts, to open our hearts and to spread that out into the world. So a lot of yoga, there's whole styles of yoga that are all about heart opening, all the guarding of people's hearts. If they've been hurt a lot or they're very guarded in our world, it helps to open the heart so people come out not only feeling refreshed physically and spiritually, but also in their hearts to go out and do good things in the world.
That's very interesting. So it's an integrated
Tikkun
mind and
olam.
soul, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, but you feel that the yoga really is interesting because certain
Yes.
things that, like medical science, obviously, and sometimes you need a pill, but on the other hand, certain things, like you say, arthritis, they can't heal.
Or thyroid, different poses that work your neck, that work the endocrine system. So basically, with a yoga pose, you might be holding a pose, but you're still breathing. So you're still oxygenating that area. When you finally release the pose, you get a fresh supply of blood through the area you were just holding tight. So it's a lot of tightening and softening and tightening and softening. So not only does it flush through the body, and you drink water, you flush toxins out of the body, it also teaches you when you're holding stress and you don't realize you're holding stress, what it feels like to let it go, which I found this weekend. Even the caregivers of the wheelchair-bound folks, some of them had never relaxed. They did not know what that felt like. So, and to me, that's...
So you're teaching the teachers over here, so that's very good.
So I consider it a form of prayer because it gets you in touch, it gets you to slow down, it gets all the chatter to stop. You stop everything, just like Shabbat. You give yourself that break.
We're talking about the modern society. Sometimes I think, like I also work out, I say, Rabbi, you work out as well, a healthy, the soul inside of a healthy body. So I do. But sometimes I think, all the equipment and this and that, and really, is it maybe in ancient times, you had to walk everywhere.
You walked, you climbed, you walked, you worked hard.
Yeah, and nowadays, you sit in the computer, like you say, or you go into a car. Oh, now I have to go to work out.
You drive your car to the gym so you can go get on a treadmill and act like you're walking. And I often will end my classes when people, because the way a yoga class starts with about a 5-minute centering meditation where I take people through the body and go through softening all the way down, but also feel their connection to the earth, to the sky. Then we open the spine, then we warm up the muscles, then we bring the breath in, then we go through the poses. And at the very end of a yoga class, you have about 10 minutes, maybe more, depending on the length of the class, of just relaxation. People are on their backs. I lead them through where they start to soften. And at the end, when they're waking back up and when they come back to their bodies and the awareness is back, I really talk about our bodies being the temples of our souls, so that really it's manifesting out. And that's another Eastern philosophy also, that the soul is deep inside, but it manifests out through many layers that reach out until you finally come into the physical.
You got to let it manifest itself out. People just don't. I
mean, they're not in their bodies.
Judaism,
Yeah.
The Jewish, they don't let them. There's so many outside influences, like you're saying, the stresses and from inside the house and and outside. So you get so
forget who you are.
You get so like you're saying, so
it's
tense.
Easy. It's so easy. It doesn't take much to throw us off. We're always on a little tightrope, and it doesn't take much to throw people off that line and that balance. So I find yoga helps everybody get back into their balance. And what I also have found is whatever religion people are, they've just become more spiritual in whatever direction they are. And what I've found in yoga programs is a lot of acceptance of that, so that it brings people together on a common ground. I remember one woman I met at Kripalu was teaching yoga on the front lines in Israel with Arabs and Israelis together, so that it was bringing people together, which is always a good thing.
And that's interesting. So you don't push really any spiritual, you just, whatever you think of, whatever you want,
yes.
You can.
Yes, I go for just spiritual. And to me, that's the main part, is to just feel that open-heartedness towards others.
You see now, just in our community, there's you mentioned it yourself, but just hot yoga. I never saw it before. I mean, these are just
Hot yoga is a premise that in India it's much warmer, so when you heat up a room and you have more warmth in the room, that you will stretch more easily. And it is true to have a warmer room for yoga. That can be extreme. A lot of people love it because they get a better flexibility. It could be over 100 degrees in that room.
Really?
And there was a fellow, the Bikram style, that came up with a whole pattern of yoga. You could be standing, you could be down, you could be moving around. It's about 26 poses twice in an hour in a very hot room. You bring a lot of water, you bring a towel, you sweat, and again, it'll sweat out toxins in the body. So a lot of people really, really like hot yoga. Others like a slower style, such as Iyengar, which may only do 4 poses in an hour, but you have different support. You might have chairs, you might have blocks, you might have ties. You have a lot of different support. So again, it runs a lot of different variety, from very, very easy and very simple and very meditative restorative yoga, where you're just propped up on chairs and pillows for an hour just to be able to restore to basic balance, all the way to your hot yoga, power yoga, acro yoga. So it's American.
I mean, but there are different levels of yoga. I'm just thinking
many
about,
levels, yes.
Judo and karate, you have different belts.
Well, there's basically hatha yoga, sun moon yoga, balance yoga. And because now it's so popular, it gets commercialized. So there's many different forms of yoga. There's yoga of the heart, there's yoga of the body, there's, I call it performance yoga, where people do incredible poses. There's yoga that's just meditative with your eyes closed. There's yoga where you chant different sounds that go through the body, and you chant as you do your yoga, different breath work that either speed you up or slow you down. There's meditative breath work. So there's lots of different types of yoga. You have to find your comfort level.
And you teach one specific one?
I teach Kripalu style yoga, and a little bit of vinyasa, which means a flow of poses all strung together. And it's meditation in motion, so you're watching yourself and how you accommodate and how you feel and watch yourself, and how you feel, what your inner voice is doing, how you feel within your body, the sound of your breathing.
It's interesting. So since when you got into it, you say in the 70s, it's been really growing explosively.
Yes, I started teaching in 1996, and it's incredible or actually 1995 was when I did my training, in November of 95, and it's amazing how it's expanded. So it's exciting. It's good. Yeah, it's a good practice, as we call it.
Well, I just always think, American culture. I say American because that's all I am, but I don't know, that's what I'm trying to grasp, but maybe in hundreds of years ago they didn't need it, or maybe they had other things.
Well, yoga was originally a practice just by swamis, basically to learn how to leave their body. It was the Ayurveda science that was how to stay in your body and be healthy. So now we bring them together, and it's a complete style of health. Maybe leave your body in short amounts of time to come back in. So it's interesting when I've listened to different lectures about yoga, which is many, many styles. Yoga was originally a physical practice.
In what country, really?
In India.
Really?
In India. And then it expanded to become more of a health practice. So when Ayurvedic science, which is a science of digestion and living and better health and sleep and different patterns of the body, you put them together, and a place like Kripalu will teach you the integration of Ayurvedic science, which is a health practice, with yoga, which was more of a leave your body practice. So it's interesting to fuse them together. And now in modern times, especially with the high stress of our world, it comes in a nice balance to keep people as calm as we can and healthy as we can.
People are maybe less aggressive, or they're laid back? Maybe that's...
Yes.
But...
Definitely. I've seen people be a lot calmer. Children's yoga, when I've taught children's yoga, I would hear parents tell me their kids were so much calmer on the days that they had yoga, that evening they were getting along, they were happier.
That's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
You should really, I think you have something going there, because my sons teach in a special ed in Brooklyn, and you say they give me some idea of what's happening, and like you say, they're hyper, that they, they're...
It definitely can calm kids down. I mean, it can speed them up, but it can also calm them down, and then get them in touch with their body. And they learn their own inner control of their impulses. So you become aware of your impulses.
Instead of giving them medicine, I feel bad for all these kids that they have so much medicine, but if this would be an alternative to
Yep.
Finding yourself, like you say, or all the
to integrate it into their program.
Yeah.
Definitely a good tool for anyone, any age, to become more aware of themselves and their impulses.
Well, maybe you have something good here because people have so many. Again, as a rabbi, I counsel people. I surely don't give medicine. I'm not a doctor, but just people are all uptight, anxieties, like you were saying, and have so much troubles, and just try to calm them down. I try to do it through the Torah and the mitzvahs. But,
that's okay. It's good
that's
stuff.
good also over here. All right, we're out of time, but it was very, very interesting to talk about
Rabbi.
that. There's still more to talk about Judaism and yoga, but
absolutely, we could go on for hours.
In any case, Dad, thank you for coming on. I hope our viewers gain a lot also and contact you for
Yoga's good medicine is what I call it. It is. It's good spiritual medicine. It's good physical medicine. It's something definitely to try, and you can do it with a Jewish theme if you'd like, just to bring that in. But it's really mini Shabbat for the body. Get in touch with your neshama. Open your heart.
Much.
Thank you.